Hey guys, in the professional wrestling world, we're often reminded that our heroes, our superheroes, are real when we have weekends like we just did, where we lost three of them: Brickhouse Brown, Nikolai Volkov, and Brian Christopher Lawler. My condolences goes out to the families of these gentlemen.
No, baby, that's for somebody else. We're just gonna keep you right where you're at right now.
It doesn't matter what you think.
The Wrestling Realm presents Break It Down with Brian H.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Break It Down with Brian H. Episode number 21. That means I've been with you guys and you guys been with me for exactly half a year. So thanks for joining me. So if you're new to the show, you can always check us out on the Wrestling Realm. Make sure you log into Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I would say MySpace, but we're not there. But we are on iTunes, YouTube, Podbean, SoundCloud, Google Play, Stitcher, and Spotify. Did I get it all? I'll be honest with you. SoundCloud isn't as active as it used to be, but you can still catch some old stuff on there. So, now, with today's show, I was watching Monday Night Raw. And it was one of those episodes where it's like, you know what, this might go somewhere. We saw Roman Reigns come out there and, he started talking trash about Brock Lesnar. And I started feeling like, all right, Roman, you do all this trash talk. You remember what happened around WrestleMania. You came out there, you said all this stuff and the other. And then next thing you know, you got beat up beforehand. Well, Paul Heyman basically said Brock Lesnar isn't coming. So one of the things that was interesting, because throughout the whole night we saw Paul Heyman begging Lesnar, because Kurt Angle said, look, if Lesnar does not come out here, you are going to be fired. Well, Heyman would take the whole night begging and pleading, Brock Lesnar, please come out, just show up. He even tried to persuade him, say, look, you got all the people that's going to cheer you. And I'm sitting there thinking, Brock doesn't care about none of that. He only cares about one thing, the money. Well, guess what? Finally, as Paul Heyman was about to be fired, actually, I believe he was told that he was fired. Suddenly, Brock Lesnar comes out there and delivers an F5 to Kurt Angle. Shades of their feud back during the Ruthless Aggression era. And Baron Corbin said, you know what? I'm out of here. I don't need to be involved. And then Brock Lesnar would put his hands on Paul Heyman. So I got to ask the question, is there trouble between Brock Lesnar and Paul Heyman? Is Brock Lesnar done with Paul Heyman? Does he realize he don't need him? Has he earned enough money with Heyman that he can move on? Now, here's one thing that I wouldn't mind seeing, even though we've seen it before, and I know some people may disagree. Perhaps Paul Heyman turns on Lesnar and joins Roman Reigns at SummerSlam. Now, I don't think that's a strong enough. Maybe it is. Maybe I think Paul Heyman could keep Roman heel. But that would be interesting. So, but nonetheless, Paul Heyman got what he had coming to him. Lesnar, he said, you using me, you trying to leech off of me. And I really want to see where this is going. I can't wait for SummerSlam. Now you got me interested in this match. Not so much the match between the two, but I want to see where this story goes. I'm not sure if we see. I'm not one of the people who keep track of Lesnar's dates, but I'm not sure if we see Brock Lesnar before SummerSlam. I mean, you would think we would, but who knows? So I want to see exactly what's going to happen. But let's move on to SmackDown, because I got to go right in to my top rope this week.
Going up to the top rope.
It's time for this week's Top Rope segment of the week.
All right, so my top rope this week is Samoa Joe. I mean, he basically went out there and told AJ Styles, you're not a good father, a good husband. And he said, you're not there every week. And that's something that's personal. The last thing a father who's out providing, being the biggest name in the company, perhaps one of the biggest names in the world of professional wrestling, doing what he can to provide for his family. Last thing he wants to hear, or is to say, be reminded of, that he's not there with his kids. And you can see how much AJ Styles loves his kids. I mean, just look at his body. He has their names tattooed, their birth dates tattooed on him. So for Samoa Joe to go there, he went personal. And this is what I wanted to see because, he hit AJ Styles home. And he said he was going to, burn down the house that he built, put him to sleep, and send him home. And said, guess what? His family would be happy because he would be home. Said AJ Styles is lacking as a dad because he's always on the road. And this is a feud that, for us fans who've been watching these two before they entered the WWE, this is a feud that we knew was we wanted to see when AJ Styles and Samoa Joe entered the WWE. We knew we wanted to see this on a big stage. I mean, we're getting SummerSlam, the second biggest stage in WWE history to WrestleMania. And now for Samoa Joe to really get personal, he could have said stuff like, oh, yeah, we wrestled years and wrestled all over the world and I beat you before. He could have said that, sure. But he went into a different direction. This is a direction I wasn't expecting. So, I mean, Samoa Joe has just proven that he's one of the best heels in the business. A lot of times people sleep on him, I think, because there was a lot of times where people were chanting Joe, Joe, Joe. So it's like, okay, he's good, but he's just another, I won't say another heel, but another guy, another cool heel. But now he got personal AJ Styles. AJ Styles is the face that runs the place. I think this is what this feud needed to, one, keep Joe heel, and to get AJ Styles to keep tapping in to that side that makes him get real personal. We didn't have to see it with Rusev because it wasn't really as personal as it got with Shinsuke over time. But now he's coming out of the gate. He's going to look to deliver Samoa Joe a huge butt whooping. So right now, if you keep a score, Samoa Joe's up 2-0. Speaking of something else that's personal, Daniel Bryan and The Miz. I mean, this feud right here, if the story writes itself, this is what put Talking Smack on the map. That moment right there is when people said, we want to see Daniel Bryan back in the ring because we want to see him get his butt whooped. As my brother, the real Dwayne Allen, said, Daniel Bryan owes The Miz a butt whooping for over 2 years ago. Miz constantly, one of the WWE guys, saying, hey, you was out there and you was out there running the road 10 years. Wow, I just marched right into the WWE and essentially into the main event of WrestleMania. Miz was in the main event of WrestleMania on the same night that Daniel Bryan's match got dropped from the main card to the pre-show, WrestleMania 27. So there's a lot of animosity here, and I can't wait. Miz always knows how to hit Daniel Bryan home. And that's one of the things we've seen over time. He had put the things that baby said, oh, Daniel Bryan is a crybaby. He tried to tell Daniel Bryan that the people just don't care about him anymore. Told him he just need to just let his contract expire and hit the indies again. So when these two go at it, man, SummerSlam is building up. It's going to be a lot of personal feuds. I think we may see more personal feuds than WrestleMania. So, obviously, we'll look into that more as we get closer to the show. But this is building up to be better than what I thought. And then, SmackDown is just, obviously, to me, I've said it over and over again, it's just better than Monday Night Raw. And then we go into Randy Orton and Shinsuke Nakamura beating up Jeff Hardy. Jeff Hardy was talking about how much the United States title meant to him. But Orton, who said that every WWE superstar eats off the table he set. And, is he lying? The guy's been around for over a decade. Him and John Cena. And he's even said, I wasn't concerned about selling new T-shirts. I wasn't concerned about the movies. I was here on the road. And then a couple weeks ago, it was Orton ripping Jeff Hardy's earring out. It was so sickening. This week, he ripped Hardy's necklace. We're seeing a sadistic Randy Orton, and this is the Randy Orton that I've always said is the biggest heel in the business. So I'm interested to see where this goes. I'm interested to see where Shinsuke Nakamura ends up in the mix. Will this match be a triple threat match? Perhaps will it be a handicap match for the United States Championship? You know, Jeff Hardy wants the belt back, it sounds like, or I should say title back. However, this is personal with him and Orton. So I'm going to take a break. Ladies and gentlemen, this past weekend, the real Dwayne Allen and I, the Wrestling Wrealm, we joined the panel, the Dr. D's Dream panel this week. And, you know, it was at BlurCon where people could be themselves. If you don't know what a blur is, it's a black nerd. And the convention is like Comic-Con. But here we saw a lot of people dressed in cosplay. And we were part of a wrestling panel that included professional wrestler Xavier Anderson. I almost call him Johnson. Xavier Anderson, also known as X-Men. Marcus Dowling, one of the co-promoters of Capital Wrestling up in New Jersey. Nephew Corey of Wrestling Marks of Excellence. And the man, the legend himself, Dr. D. If it's anybody that knows independent wrestling, it's Dr. D. So I got a clip that I want to roll, and this comes from the real Dwayne Allen, and you'll see why it is important for you to embrace your wrestling fandom.
The biggest thing when it comes to the word mark is the stereotype. I think, by definition, what was said by both these two astute brothers who gave great definitions, that's the truth of it, but that's not the term, and that's not the way people want to use it. People like to take that term and use it for wrestling fans who are so in love with it that they spend the majority of their time researching things that have nothing to do with their lives. If you don't believe me, you can turn to E and watch Total Divas, Total Bellas, and whatever other reality shows out there, because if you think about it, those shows are created for people that want to know more. Let's be real, we're all adults in some situation, and sometimes majority of people who are adults, they love wrestling when they were a child. And half of that group grew out of it. The other half are us. And we still enjoy it. And even though that we know what we do know, what we enjoy and all those things, I think we can separate the fact that, okay, we understand the business and we still love it for what it is, not for what people assume that it's supposed to be. So when you show your love for something that they used to know as a child, they're upset, they're hurt, they're pissed because they thought it was quote unquote real. And when they find that it's not, oh, that's dumb. You're doing too much. And I think when you associate Mark with someone who's spending hours on the internet trying to debunk theories and trying to figure stuff out before the people in the industry are doing what they should be doing, which is understandable to one degree because they are the consumer, as he mentioned at the end of the day. I think when you love what you love, it doesn't really matter what anybody else has to say about it. I mean, that's why we do this. That's why we go to cons every weekend, right? Think about it. This is the one time you can come in, you can dress as your favorite player. You can dress as your favorite character, your favorite anime, your favorite cartoon, your favorite wrestler. I mean, why not? Because people like us, we understand that, listen, life is bad enough. It's rough enough. Why would I let go of things that made me happen even as a child? So if you call me a Mark, so big deal. Because while you're miserable trying to figure out what's going on with your life, I'm enjoying myself for at least 30 minutes, 45 minutes, 60 minutes a day. Every week, Monday, Tuesday, New Japan on Friday night, Saturday morning.
UFC Wednesday.
You know what I'm saying? And into what Doc was saying, we got YouTube now, so I can catch independent promotions from all around the world now. I have access to that. So why would I really consider that a negative term? But I do get where it's come from, but I think it's a stereotype that we sometimes try to not fall into or defend ourselves.
And I'm back, ladies and gentlemen. So let's move on to the ladies, because we got a lot this past week. Let's start with Raw. Sasha Banks and Bayley. So I know I seem to talk about these two every week, but guess what? I mean, the people, obviously in the social media world, y'all like it. Sasha Banks and Bayley, they have a new name, the Boss and Hug Connection. So the Boss and Hug Connection wrestled the Riot Squad, and they were victorious. One of the things that we saw was they have matching gear, and they look like a well-oiled machine. So I thought this was great. So I'm two ways. These are two things that's going to happen. We're either going to see them break up, or we're going to see the WWE establish a tag team women's division. I didn't think I wanted a tag team women's division, but I think I'm okay with it. And the Boss and Hug Connection, I'm fine with that. But remember, you create a tag team, this leads to a bigger feud down the line. This makes the rivalry even better. I've always said time and time again, and you'll hear me say this later as I get into another women's match, that we need feuds for the women that's not surrounded by the championship. Bayley said that on Austin's podcast. A part of women's revolution is not just about longer matches, but it's about having meaningful feuds, meaningful matches, and in this case, not about the championship. Speaking of another one that wasn't about a championship, Lana and Zelina Vega. So let's be real. This might be what you've considered back in the day, you might consider this a Divas match. However, if you watch Zelina Vega before she came to WWE, you would know that she can go. But we saw those two. They had an issue. And this is your typical, the valets have an issue with each other, so let them duke it out. But the match wasn't that bad. I actually enjoyed it, not just because of two beautiful women. I was sitting here watching it with my son, and he was like, he didn't like neither one of them because he was annoyed by both of them. He's 8. Okay. So, but I enjoyed the match. I enjoyed the story, how they tried to one-up each other, where Zelina Vega do her sit-down cross or whatever, and then Lana started dancing. In the end, Aiden English comes out there, gets involved, and then he gets himself in trouble. But what I like about this feud, again, it's not about a championship. It's literally two women having an issue with each other. And now this could be the beginning to the end of Rusev Day. While Lana did say she needed to do this on her own, then later said Rusev, she needed him. So that was interesting. What I do like about this feud is that it began with a simple tweet, began on social media, and the GM page decided, you know what, ladies, you guys are going to have it out at SmackDown. So, but let's move on to some championship gold. And we're going to start with Monday Night Raw. So, Ronda Rousey will take on Alexa Bliss at SummerSlam. However, this past week, we saw Alicia Fox take on Natalya. Alicia Fox was victorious. Two of the, as you could say, OGs of the women's division. Both of them former Divas champions, and Natalya's a former SmackDown Live women's champion. Then Ronda, but the thing is, afterwards, during the match, Ronda Rousey got beat up, which will eventually lead to Alicia Fox getting the better of Natalya and winning. But because she didn't appreciate that, and she didn't appreciate that Alexa Bliss and Alicia Fox beat her down, they requested a match. And therefore, next week, we will get Ronda Rousey versus Alicia Fox. Ronda Rousey making her debut. So, we're getting ready to get into SummerSlam. This is her Raw debut, I should say. Make sure I'm clear. Ronda Rousey making her Monday Night Raw debut. She's going to have to be wrestling on Mondays if they're going to compete with the NFL. Let's be real, because Ronda Rousey is a draw. So, that's enough to be said about that. Then we move on to SmackDown. Carmella took on Charlotte. Now, those Becky Lynch earned her spot where she would take on Carmella for the SmackDown Live Women's Championship. Finally, Becky Lynch gets her an opportunity, right? Well, guess what? Insert Charlotte, because she defeated Carmella. And Becky Lynch, although that's her girl, a triple threat match, we know, lessens your chance from 50% to 33%. So she's not too happy that she's going to have to face Charlotte and Carmella and have to win if she wants that championship. Now, here's the bright side, though. She could pin Charlotte to become the women's champion, but I think that she felt her chances were better if it was just one-on-one with her and Carmella. So I'm going to go ahead and take a break. Ladies and gentlemen, as I mentioned, Dr. D talked to us at BlurCon. Well, he was the leader, I should say, as far as setting the panel, getting everything organized. So make sure you check him out. Here's some sound where he says on why you should support your indies, because we're going into indie wrestling after this.
Last year, I was leaving Congressional Black Caucus. I'm going to plug that because wherever y'all are, y'all definitely want to be a part of that in September. I'm coming from the Congressional Black Caucus. I'm headed to the chicken and waffle joint that is open 24 hours, 24/7. I'm getting my chicken, and as I'm getting my chicken, I turn to my right. He's not in his wrestling gear, but he's definitely in Velveteen mode. Patrick was right there. I was like, Patrick, what's going on, man? He had on purple, every Prince Third Eye glasses. He had the whole gamut. So if he just happened to be home, you can pretty much tell. So support your indies.
Yeah, I like that.
And I'm back, ladies and gentlemen. So I said we're going to go into independent wrestling, but before we go there, we got to discuss. We have a brand new NXT champion, finally. And his name is Tommaso Ciampa. Now, I might have mentioned this last week on the show, but I didn't go in deep because I hadn't watched the match. Because guess what? NXT said, well, we're going to give you our own spoiler because we're going to have the match on one of our tape shows rather than one of our takeovers. So this is why that part made sense. Tommaso Ciampa is the biggest heel in the WWE's roster, period. Anything affiliated with the WWE, Tommaso Ciampa is the biggest heel. If you put him in this match at a takeover, you have not only your NXT core crowd from Full Sail, but you also have other wrestling fans. You run the risk that maybe he get cheered because people are happy that they saw a title change. Instead, he wins the match in Florida, and when he wins it in Florida, the crowd is left shocked, and then they start booing. And then the match was phenomenal. We all know Aleister Black can go in the ring. I've always said that, yeah, he can go in the ring, but what's more? Tommaso Ciampa can go in the ring. And these two went out there and put on a hell of a match. And then Johnny Gargano, because he didn't want Ciampa to have the belt so bad that he interfered. And guess what? Him getting in the way cost Aleister Black the championship. Now we'll see a different side of Aleister Black. Now we'll see what happens. But guess what? I think that this will take the feud of Ciampa and Gargano to a whole new level because now you're going to have the title involved. So let's move on. MLW Battle Riot. Have you checked it out? I'm very high on MLW, Major League Wrestling program. Last week, I'm going to go based off of the tapings that aired on Bean Sports, or in my case, YouTube. Last week, we saw them crown a new heavyweight champion when Low Key beat Shane Strickland. Well, I should say 2 weeks ago now. This past week, they had Battle Riot. So, for those who do not know, it's their version of a Battle Royal. The difference is it's not just over-the-top rope eliminations. There's pinfalls. There's submissions and over-the-top rope. And during this night, we saw Tom Lawler, who entered number 5, outlast 39 other men to become the winner and earn a shot at the MLW Championship. There was a lot of great stars. One of the things, a couple of key things I liked in there. I'm not going to go over everything, but one, Lance Onawai and Samu. Yes, the former WWE Tag Team Champion of the Head Shrinkers. Samu is Lance Onawai's dad. We saw them two in the ring together, and it was Lance that eliminated his dad. We also saw Teddy Hart come out there, and the people wanted to see him and Tom Lawler get it on. Instead, Teddy Hart eliminated himself. So, man, I mean, Harry Smith was in there. Jack Swagger, or his name Jake, I forgot his name, pardon me. But if you aren't watching MLW, I highly encourage you to watch it. I mean, it's a lot of good wrestling. We talked about this on a panel. It's a lot of great wrestling out there. A lot of indies. So, moving on. Oh, also, they crowned a MLW middleweight champion, and that is MJF, Maxwell Jacob Feinstein. And MJF, I mean, this guy is phenomenal. He's a great heel. He just knows how to get under his opponent's skin. And him and Joey Ryan, I mean, Joey Ryan is somebody who was not for the children, per se, but those two found a way to keep the match entertaining, and I suggest everybody go out there and check it out. Like I said, you can watch it for free on YouTube. Fire up, your phones, your computers, or your Roku or your PlayStation or Xbox. But now, before we get into wrestling for the culture, I got some sound from Marcus Darling. A lot of people say, why isn't there a black WWE champion? Marcus answers that question right here.
WWE is a corporate company now. This is not pro wrestling.
Yeah.
Right.
You have to be able to stand and deliver in front of rooms of white folks with gray suits with square shoulders. And you have to be able also to, in the ring, you have to be in the ring, you have to be able to wrestle matches in a heavyweight style commensurate with WWE wants, with guys who are indie guys who take a million bumps and will fly around you all the time. So you have to be able to do both of these things at the same time, while also you have to be able to do this within 10-minute segments of time. 300 days a year, in the exact same way. And I'll tell you who the person is. It's on the roster, and that's because you know him and we all know him because we've all seen this person. It's Velveteen Dream.
And I'm back, ladies and gentlemen. That was Marcus Darling. Make sure you check him out at Capital Wrestling Feud. I said Fed up in New Jersey. I'm gonna have to check it out. Always like supporting people. So now it's time for wrestling for the culture.
It's time for Wrestling for the Culture, where we take a look inside to see what the wrestlers of color have been doing this week.
Wrestling for the Culture this week brought to you by DBrianHWaters.com. Make sure you go in there, and when you're making your Amazon purchases, purchase it right from the website. This week, we have, as I said earlier, the Wrestling Realm does BlurCon, so you can go on the website and check out the pictures that we took. We also saw Faye Jackson and Willow Nightingale, also known as Team Thick and Juicy, become the new Queens of Combat Tag Team Champions. Speaking of Faye Jackson, she, along with Mia Yim and Jonathan Gresham, put on for the culture at Nova Pro's Harlem Nights. And last, but certainly not least, Booker T was honored with the Luthez Award this past weekend at the Dan Gable Wrestling Museum. So shout out to Booker T. I mean, he's doing big things. Not only, he's a WWE Hall of Famer, Cauliflower Wrestling Hall of Famer. He's in, he has his own promotion called Reality of Wrestling. I mean, look at Ember Moon. Somebody, he said he would admit that he didn't think had it, but she continued to work hard, and now she's a former NXT Women's Champion. So shout out to Booker T. His contributions to the business will not go unnoticed. In my opinion, the greatest black WWE superstar that I should say 100% black WWE superstar that I've ever seen wrestle. So shout out to Booker T. Now it's time for everybody's favorite part, From the Realm. And now for our From the Realm segment, where I answer your questions from the Facebook fan page, the Facebook group page, and the Twitter at Wrestling Realm. And now, From the Realm, our first question comes from the Shark, Sean Williams. Make sure you check out his show each and every week on Podbean and YouTube. His first question, this is actually a question from last week. I accidentally missed it. Does Aleister Black make the roster before the year is out? I hope not. I'll be honest with you. I want to see his character become a heel and become a sadistic heel. Just look at him, and I'll just leave it at that. Does Johnny Gargano win the NXT title this year? When do you see him and Ciampa having that showdown for the title? So I think that we'll have them. They'll face off at TakeOver Brooklyn, and then maybe that's the triple threat match. Then they'll probably take face off around the Survivor Series. But I think ultimately Gargano doesn't win the title this year, but I think he wins it at WrestleMania weekend, because right now they'll be going head to head with New Japan and ROH, and I think that's the best time to have that match, to have that feud climax because those are two stars, and they are certainly have NXT on the map. And said, what is WWE doing with Jinder Mahal? I'm not a fan of his, but I can even see he's gone from world champion to below mediocrity. I mean, Raw, man, it's just, he should still be on SmackDown. That's what I think. You know, he had just won the United States Championship at WrestleMania, only to lose to Jeff Hardy the next night, for Jeff Hardy to take the belt back to SmackDown. I think he should have, him and Bobby Roode, they should have just stayed on Raw. They would have been in much better feuds right now. All right, so moving on. William Walters, his question: do you think the main roster is too deep? Seems like there isn't enough time to develop a plethora of feuds like there was in the 90s. So, I was watching Raw, and one of the things I noticed was they do these packages. Like, so they talked about Evolution, right? And they gave a whole 4 to 5 minute rerun of last week, and there's like this vignette and montage, and I'm like, why you do that? Then I watched SmackDown, and this is where we say SmackDown flows better, because when watching SmackDown, it was, Samoa Joe comes out there, they do a quick highlight package, probably no more than 2 minutes, to show what happened with him and AJ Styles, and boom, into Samoa Joe's promo. Why can't they do that with Raw? That essentially could have been another match. We also see some matches just run too long. Finn Balor, Baron Corbin, why? We just had the match at Extreme Rules, so why are we having it this long? So that's what I think the problem is. I don't think it's necessarily that the roster's too deep, and perhaps it could be, but even when they had the SmackDown and you had the SmackDown roster and the Raw roster during the 2002, 2003, it didn't feel like it dragged on. I think that because it's 3 hours, they let that 3 hours drag on longer than it should. So, speaking of 3 hours, my man Kevin Crittenden, hope I said your name right, has a question. If you had to change Raw's formula 3 hours, how would you change it? The Nitro way? For those who do not know, the Nitro way was the cruiserweights came out there the first hour. They just kind of warmed up the crowd, and so that they could get a jump start on the ratings. And then the NWO came out there and did some stuff. Maybe. So like I said just earlier, I wouldn't have these long vignettes. I feel like sometimes Raw has 2 or 3 of them. I wouldn't have these long vignettes, and I wouldn't have really long matches. I would find a way to work in the tag match. Obviously I think you start off with a promo. I think it just gets the show going. Believe it or not, I saw this on Twitter and I had to agree. Sorry for not remembering who tweeted it. But somebody said Roman Reigns, when he starts Monday Night Raw, he gets the energy going. And I was like, you know what? It's kind of not wrong, depending on what feud he's in. But I think you start off that way most of the time. And then, you have, I don't think you always have to have that first person who comes out in a match. But I do think you have to get your tag teams going. I think you got to have every feud needs to mean something. So that's what I would do with Raw. I wouldn't have these long vignettes. That's the problem right there. What I noticed is the long vignettes, and that prevents the show from flowing smoothly. His next question: bookend towards WrestleMania 35. Who wins the Rumble and headlines the main matches? So, in case you may have not, I've said this before, I'll say it again. My Royal Rumble winner, you should know I'm going with Daniel Bryan. He wins that. The headline match, the match that closes the show, the main event for the WWE Championship. It's Daniel Bryan versus AJ Styles. That closes the show. Some of my other headline matches, I'm going to get Braun Strowman versus Roman Reigns. I'm going to have Charlotte Flair versus Ronda Rousey. And those are the ones that just jump right out. Oh, and Sasha Banks versus Bayley. That's where I finally had that feud climax. It's a whole year in the making. I'm showing vignettes from last year to this year. And guess what? I'm also doing The Rock versus Triple H. It's time. Let's get that feud one-on-one. Those two, you can have a plethora of footage. You can go back to when Rock was Rocky Maivia and Triple H was Hunter Hearst Helmsley, and you build it all the way up to DX versus The Nation, The Rock versus The Corporation, or Rock versus the corporate ministry. You know, that's what I have it. The Rock versus Triple H. And then AJ Styles' next feud. Is he suffering? Who's AJ Styles' next feud? Is he suffering due to true challengers? You know what? I'm going to say this. Let's enjoy the Samoa Joe feud because I think it's really good. And I think it could take us for a while. I'm not really sure who's next up on SmackDown. Maybe we get an AJ Styles Randy Orton feud. While I don't want to see Orton win the title, I wouldn't mind seeing that feud. AJ Styles. But, you know, then again, we kind of saw it last year, but it would be different. You know, I know we saw them wrestle going into WrestleMania 33, but how memorable was that? One thing I do remember was AJ Styles jumping for the forearm and then getting RKO'd, and then the next week faking out. You know, which they faked the cameraman out. Or they wanted us to believe they faked the cameraman out. So that's what I'm going to say about that. And then my last question from my brother of the Flex Zone, D. Make sure you follow him at Dive Sporting Net. Make sure you check out the Flex Zone each and every week. And his question, how would you rehab Woken, Matt Hardy, and Bray Wyatt? Man, honestly, I would probably switch them shows, you know, and then I'm that guy who just has hope that Matt Hardy's going to one day wear a WWE Championship gold, even if it's just for 10 days or 2 weeks. I know I'm thinking a lot and I'm wishing for a lot, but I would just have them, you know, lose and leave town and go to SmackDown. So that's where I'm in with that. Ladies and gentlemen, I enjoy it. Another great week here on Break It Down with Brian H. Make sure you are subscribed to the Wrestling Wrealm on YouTube, on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Stitcher, Podbean, Spotify, and iTunes. Make sure you're also on Google Play, and make sure you leave a 5-star review. And if you're on YouTube, click one of those buttons right there and watch any of our previous episodes. Till the next time, so long, everybody.